Hi everybody, good morning and welcome to this webinar hosted by InMobi. My name is Rajesh Pantina. I lead the marketing efforts for InMobi in Asia Pacific and I'll be your host for today. I hope you can hear me fine. Please try logging off and signing in again in case of any issues where our voice is breaking down or you're dropping in and off. Or drop our team a note using the chat window and we'll take it from there. Now before we start, a quick note on logistics. We do have a few interactions or questions for you, the audience, during the webinar to share your opinion and would encourage each one of you to participate in it. We will also take questions after the webinar. You can add them to the questions window that you see on your deck, and we will take it from there. For those of you who are attending an InMobi webinar for the first time, as a quick introduction, InMobi Group's mission is to power intelligent, mobile-first experiences for enterprises and consumers. Its businesses across advertising, marketing, data, and content platforms are shaping consumer experience in a world of connected devices. The group's portfolio companies include InMobi Marketing Cloud, TrueFactor, and Glance, the world's first Screen Zero platform. InMobi Group has been recognized on both the 2018 and 2019 CNBC Disruptor 50 lists and is one of Fast Company's 2018 World's Most Innovative Companies. Now at InMobi, we regularly host a series of events, meetups, and webinars across the globe to share best practices and learnings. In today's webinar titled Celebrating the Era of the Connected Consumer, we are joined by Vasta Agarwal. Vasta is the Managing Director for the Asia Pacific business at InMobi and manages the P&L, revenue, strategic partnerships, and business functions for these markets. She's been with InMobi for over 7 years and has worn many hats in her time, from the founder's strategy team to product manager to a business role. And together, we will help you demystify the new age connected consumer, understand the Bharat opportunity, also delve into the 3 C's that are today defining the connected consumer of India, and at the same time, from a marketer standpoint, help identify how peers are thinking about their 2020 marketing strategy, and ultimately tie the consumer trends and guide you on your mobile marketing strategy for the year. Now jumping in, demystifying the new age consumer. The first iPhone was launched back in 2007 and thus began a global connectivity revolution. While India has seen it for a very short time, it has witnessed a phenomenal connectivity transformation in the last decade. That means that we are today the second largest internet economy in the world after China and the leading data consumer in the world. What has led to this rise is falling smartphone prices and cheap data tariffs. Now, these have also contributed to the significant improvement in the global mobile connectivity index over the past couple of years, as India stands on par with the global average of 56%. India, having doubled its mobile penetration in the last decade, is slated to reach 90% mobile penetration by 2022. Now, interestingly, this means that mobile is going to be the primary device for internet connectivity across the nation, both urban and rural India. And interestingly, today, mobiles account for 13% of a user's daily time and is the native screen. But there is a distinct aspect to the rise of this connectivity in India. It has created a digital economy for all. Rural India, or Bharat, is slowly ruling the connectivity race with a 400% growth in internet subscribers in the last decade. Now, what is also unique is that mobile is the primary and probably the only device through which Bharat comes online and is expected to be a reality for 90% of the population in Bharat by 2022. Now, the connected consumer in India in 2020 can be described as yummy. They are young, aspirational, mobile native, and impulsive. Now, 65% of India is under the age of 35 as of 2020, and hence the yummy, predominantly millennials and Gen Z, are characterized by increasing spending capacity, a penchant for impulsive shopping, which is then juxtaposed with low brand loyalty. For example, an average smartphone user in India has 69 apps and uses 35 apps monthly on an average. The Yummy are also multi-screeners with 50% of their activity either shopping or researching or exploring starting on mobile and 75% using more than one device simultaneously. And as time progresses, the Yummy will comprise of more and more non-urban smartphone users. This obviously makes Bharat the next frontier for traditional and new age brands alike. Now by 2020, India will add 300 million internet users. Half of all these new users will come from new rural communities and 48% of all internet users will be from Bharat. Now, what we see is that there are several enabling factors, both in terms of a consumer driven or be it driven by businesses and the government. The first thing is there is an increasing internet penetration where infrastructure investments such as public Wi-Fi and Jio's expanding network, apart from the existing networks of Airtel and Vodafone, will enable 40 million more connected users in this year. Also, vernacular communications increasingly being adopted by brands is going to be a big driving force for all the rural consumers to adopt mobile as the primary means of interaction with brands. Also, increasing internet speeds. While there was the idea of 2G or 3G being present today in the rural areas, 4G is something that's becoming a reality in Bharat by as we progress with it every progressing day. Also, there are government-led digital literacy programs, which are digital skill initiatives that are empowering each individual in Bharat to understand and interact with digital platforms such as mobiles and apps. And this is a big force that's going to pick up in 2020. Another important and interesting factor is the financial inclusion of rural consumers. The financial enablement for rural customers is being set up using Aadhaar and mobile-enabled payments. This will further make sure that mobile becomes the primary channel through which rural consumers interact with brands. However, if we see 91% of new shoppers on e-commerce websites or apps are from tier 2, tier 3 cities, but due to cost, network availability, their usage patterns are markedly different from those in urban India. The top concerns of the consumers when shopping digitally still are some of the primary factors that probably troubled urban consumers at the start of the digital revolution. One is the need to touch and feel products prior to purchasing, which is a very retail or offline phenomenon that still exists in rural Bharat. There is also the lack of brand credibility when it comes to online platforms, and hence will require a larger brand awareness and penetration within these rural consumers' mindset. Also, unfamiliarity caused by both tech and language barriers and a fear of poor after-sales service are some of the barriers to adoption of these online platforms. But winning the consumer in Bharat is not something that's impossible. Today, if brands offer vernacular options on their mobile apps or go light on text and instead leverage a lot of visual communications, educate users on steps to address their concerns and their issues when it comes to online shopping, they can easily win over consumers in Bharat and encourage them to shop online. Now, I will hand it over to Vasudha to basically lead you through the 3 C's of the connected Indian consumer and the 2020 voice of the Indian market.
Thanks, Rajesh. Before we dive into the 3 C's of the connected Indian consumer, and just tying it together, the really sort of 3 big pillars, some of which Rajesh alluded to in his section, is around context, commerce, and content, and how these 3 C's are really coming together to change the shape of the industry. And we will now just quickly talk about how that context angle, makes a difference in the life of the consumer and the impact it has on a marketeer. So if you see this screen, which is talking about context, essentially in the world of the connected consumer, context is equivalent to a better experience for a customer or a consumer. The reason for that is that the attitude towards data sharing is changing significantly. If there is a perceived benefit of sharing data, whether it is location data or any kind of personal data, then consumers are open to sharing that information. So especially if you see on the location dimension around things like, if the perceived benefit is saving money, or, if it's going to increase safety and security, almost 75% people have said that, they would be okay to share that, right? On the personal data side, again, there are things like, if there is a financial benefit like a discount or a reward, again, if there is, increased safety and security, or even to enable a service, information like that, if it requires collection of personal data, people are open to sharing it. So context becomes important, and if you see, the attitude towards data sharing is changing based on a perceived benefits that the consumer sees. Now, what does this mean for marketeers, right? What is the impact on your marketing initiatives? So you see a study here which actually talks about the effect of context on various dimensions, right? From ad recall in the left chart to other things like brand awareness, customer acquisition, customer retention and loyalty, and so on. And if you see the effect of context on ad recall, which is the blue bars on the left, is higher across verticals compared to marketing campaigns or initiatives which are not contextually matched or targeted. So context does become very important when you're talking about even your marketing outcomes or ROI. On the right, you see that things like customer acquisition have almost a 2x impact due to the impact of contextual experiences on the key metric. So definitely, even from a marketeer side, the context element becomes extremely important. You will also see in the next couple of slides why that is important and extremely relevant in when it comes to the next C, which is commerce, right? So we talked about context, and then bringing it to how commerce is changing as we move forward. So if you see, India in the last 5 years has completely evolved into a mobile commerce superpower in some ways, from the 7th largest market to the 5th largest, even overtaking Japan and Germany when it comes to the size of the mobile commerce market. There is almost a 2x increase that you see from 2018 to 2023 when it comes to percentage of e-commerce sales, and the volume of m-commerce sales as well, which is growing almost at a 30% CAGR. So definitely the e-commerce and especially mobile commerce market in India is evolving significantly, and there are multiple reasons for that, which we'll quickly talk about. But also, let's briefly, I think, talk about the role that mobile plays in this online shopping journey and consumer behavior, because as a lot of you said, there is a lot of focus which goes into mobile as a channel when it comes to your consumer focused shopping programs. So if you see, this was a survey that we did during the festive season, an InMobi survey covering almost 1,500 plus users across cities. So we tested that what role does mobile play in the different phases of the consumer journey, from learning to exploring to buying. And if you see, mobile has a significant role to play in each part. In fact, in the exploration and in the buying phase, mobile has a dominant role to play even compared to the in-store experience. So mobile is really starting to anchor, or has already become a core part of the purchase journey of a consumer. And that is why I think for all of you who are already focusing on that as an important experience for your shopper, that's absolutely great. And for those of you who are planning to do that this year, that's definitely the need of the hour. The reason that you see for this is also, because what has happened is, with the advent of mobile commerce and mobile as a platform for commerce, is that it has completely disrupted the norms on shopping, right? Impulsivity is the new norm of shopping. There is nothing like, buyer's remorse anymore because of just the amount of information, the ease of access of information that's available. So when you're making a purchase decision, you're already very well informed in a lot of ways. In addition to that, the options to just, of COD, of returns and so on, really make, the impulse purchase notion very, very easy and effective for people. And of course, this is boosted, by the number of just sale events that you have in the country. You see almost a 10x increase in the last 4 years. And the volume of mobile sessions on all the leading e-commerce platforms in the country, which has continued to grow year on year, as you see on the chart on the right. So that's on the second C, which is commerce, how that's changing, how consumer behavior is completely shifting, and how mobile is playing a very dominant role in the purchase journey of the online shopper. So which brings us to the last C on content, right? And how has the content wave shifted, and how do you think of this in the new age of the connected consumer? So the content world order, if you see and you compare it, in the last decade has completely changed from being a single household consumption based format. We have moved to very individual and personalized screens when it comes to consumption. From TV, print, and radio, it has moved to mobile. In terms of time spent, right, it has almost become 5x when it comes to the kind of content we're consuming, and also in terms of just earlier, while it was programmed content, it has now also become extremely on demand because of just the number of platforms, number of categories of content, and the formats in which it is available. So really, the world order on content has shifted. And while this is, of course, great from a consumer perspective because it brings a very, different level of personalization and, ability to sort of consume things on the go and based on your flexibility, it also means that, when it comes to really leveraging this for marketeers, then it becomes a slightly tricky thing because there's just so many different, platforms on which consumers are consuming content. And to give you a sense, of course, I think most of you said short form video is really the big one. But if you were to compare, short form content and long form content, they are really driven by, the moments in a day for a consumer, right? They're driven by consumer behavior and the different sort of points in the day where they're consuming content. So there could be micro moments, which is, maybe like just 30 seconds when you are in between meetings or something else, or it could be lean back moments where you have time in the evening to really consume content in the long form, and different platforms are catering to these moments and needs in a different way. You have platforms like Insta, like Glance in Mobi, which really cater to micro moments and therefore deliver a lot of content which is more snackable, which is built for mobile based consumption, which is possibly even more vertical centric because it is on mobile. It's even more vernacular to tackle the challenge of Bharat that we referred to earlier, and making sure that it's going to the next sort of set of customers in the country. And it's obviously very personalized because it's being consumed on mobile and a very individual screen. Vis-a-vis some of the long form content which is consumed at more leisure in more sort of in lean back moments, is that's being consumed on more of connected devices, right, which could be connected TV, smart TVs, and so on. It is led more by the subscription based or SVOD model, where consumers are subscribing to content on different platforms like Netflix or Hotstar and so on. It is a lot of it is original content. It is also vernacular friendly. And again, here the option is that you could be getting a lot of personalized options dependent on your content consumption patterns. So really, you see that as the content world order has changed in the country in the last decade, the platforms also which are serving customers have evolved to cater to those needs and sort of try to serve each moment of the consumer. Now, if we were to bring these together, right, because obviously we talked about the three C's, we talked about context, we talked about commerce and content. When these C's start converging and coming together is when they become very powerful from a marketeer lens, right? So if we were to take an example of content and commerce converging, if you see here is an example of, on Glance, which is InMobi's content marketing platform. If you see here is an example where snackable content or a video is shown on the screen, and then if you want to bring commerce into the picture, you could sort of get the same look, which takes you to a catalog of products which are similar. And then also you could close the loop on the purchase by buying the product that you like. So from basically seeing a video of something that you like to buying it is extremely seamless. It also adheres to the whole notion of impulsivity that we talked about, right? But really, if you see here how content and commerce have come together to deliver that experience for the user. These are some other examples on similar lines of when content and commerce come together, they can deliver really sort of compelling results across categories, whether that's apparel and fashion, whether that's food products and so on, right? So it's a very interesting notion to bring these together. Now, switching gears a little bit, if we were to go into the 2020 voice of the marketeer, we had done a survey of 55 marketeers across brands and agencies to understand their top challenges and the trends for 2020, and also couple this with interviews with some of the top marketing and media leaders in the industry. And we'll quickly show you a video of the same.
So I think on the one hand, we've seen a lot of work in the areas of AI and ML, for example, bits and pieces here and there. But I think actually, if you look at the whole marketing value chain, I think today they can impact it at every stage, whether it's in terms of helping you sharply define your consumer, helping you, target or do personalization at scale, helping you create and adapting content and messaging, especially in a market like India where we have multiple languages and geographies, etc., and doing that very efficiently, so on and so forth. So I think all of that will get even more refined and even more efficient, etc., etc. So I think that's one powerful force which will get even more powerful.
The challenge largely I've faced is of one customer view, one funnel view, right? How do you see one customer moving from a stage of non-awareness to deep engagement and to say repeats for that matter? I think it's about getting the customer's attention at the right moment, right? The customer needs you or another service at different points in time. How do you as a brand or a business get to be as relevant as possible at that point in time is always going to be a clap.
Vernacular is the next thing which, it was like last 2 years, it has engaged so much and moved across. And they do, show an ad, it talks in maybe whatever the regional language, Tamil, Gujarati, whatever. But the point is when you click on it, the landing page is not that. That experience is not there.
Most of the new customers nowadays are coming through mobile device. So the first port of entry for them is basically a mobile device, not a laptop or a desktop device, which essentially means that I have to make sure that A, my website is business ready for a mobile platform, A, and B, I also need to make sure that when they are going through the journey, I am present there.
What does rural Bharat want? It wants buffer-free, beautiful experience. So that's the first thing you need to give them. Then what it wants ease of language. So you need to talk to them in their language, right? Now, if I go to, let's say, and I'm a small town UP girl, I know for sure that if I go to small town UP, right, and I engage with a creative that's completely in English, I have lost my audience.
Journey of a tier 4 person or a tier 3 customer,
he would typically be on different content websites. He would be consuming content. He would have all the content apps. He would have the social apps, right? So these are the first apps which a customer would install, and this is our primary gateway to get to a customer who's really driving a new user for us, right? A new user and a growth driver for us. So we are investing heavily on developing strategies which will help us take the routes which would be definitely integrated into content, and then serving that content in a fashion where it is linked to commerce and ends up into commerce as well. It could be through pure play content route, or it could also be through a social/content.
So I think you just heard, couple of industry leaders and marketers talk about what are some of the 2020 trends and challenges that they see. And if you see the survey that we did, what it outlined is that, what are the top 5 challenges that, marketers are facing as a whole. Of course, I think there was a reference to the data ecosystem, right? And how it's very fragmented right now when a user goes from one channel to another or one screen to another. And really, how do you bring that together? So I think that overwhelmingly, almost 73% of the respondents said was, their top challenge in 2020. Then things around, measuring business impact or ROI. So I think so far, a lot of the metrics have been around marketing ROI or measuring marketing outcomes. But linking that in a very tangible manner to business impact is something which is not a solved for problem in every vertical or every category, and not as easy as well if your entire purchase funnel or purchase journey does not happen online or on mobile, because tracking again, across channels from offline to online and so on is difficult. Similarly, building localized experiences. I think a lot of people alluded to, vernacular. And of course, like we also said, India is a very diverse country. There is, very large number of languages that, people operate across. And therefore, how do you make sure that you're connecting with your consumer right from, small town UP to, a metro in the southern part of the country is a problem that, people feel is an important one to solve for in 2020. Then delivering contextually relevant content. This brings, our first 2 C's together, which is to say, it has to be contextual, but then also how do you tie the right content to it, right? So I think that's another important challenge for 2020. And finally, I think attribution, right, or measurement continues to be important problem, and links in some way also to, our second one on measuring impact. But really, how do you make sure that your attribution solutions are comprehensive and concrete? So I think while of course there are challenges which we heard from the survey that we did, the good part is that there is good news on the horizon. And the reason for that is that there is a lot of room to explore in this country and in the market, because with the evolution of the consumer, right, the opportunities are abundant. So whether it is the new rise of Bharat, or it is the changing content consumption behavior, or just the rapidly evolving technology, there is a lot of room to explore across across the ecosystem. So if you see the top marketing trends for 2020 which were articulated, right, connecting with Bharat was called out as an important and immediate reality. Building contextually relevant customer experiences will become front and center, which would tie in very well to the Bharat and the vernacular language challenge as well. Delivering localized experiences, right? I think this comes to then measuring business impact, and how do you do that, especially when it comes to measuring across channels from offline to online to mobile. How do you make sure that you're delivering localized experiences till the last mile? Content marketing will get a facelift. I think everyone believes that content marketing is the way to go. It's something which both from a customer point of view and from a marketer point of view makes a lot of sense, because it brings the goodness on both sides together. And also on AI and ML, I think these have existed as buzzwords for the longest time, but really they will move beyond buzzwords into the reality of the marketer's life in 2020. So these were some of the top marketing trends that we heard, when we spoke to some of the industry leaders on this and did our marketers survey. So I think to bring it, all together, then from what we've talked about, from what you heard in the video, how do you really build, strategy for 2020, which focuses on these points, tackles these challenges, and keeps in mind, the connected consumer of 2020. So to summarize, the trend, there is obviously a big trend around context, and there is a need to build context. What you can do, to address that need is leverage the right data, whether it is location or audiences, leverage the right data so that you're reaching or targeting your user in the right context. And also running with programmatic to efficiently deliver contextual experiences for your target audiences. Micro moments, right? We talked about how consumers are consuming content in micro moments. So how do you make sure that you're leveraging those moments in the right way? And this is where a lot of the brand storytelling element and investing in the right content marketing comes into play, to really leverage these micro moments of consumers. The changing pace of commerce that we talked about, and how mobile is playing a dominant role in that journey. I think here, starting to look at downstream metrics, we talked about measuring business impact. So how do you do that? How do you also leverage things like retargeting, like personalization to improve your lifetime value of the customer? These become important elements in the purchase funnel. And lastly, I think building for Bharat. I think everybody's talked about, the need for vernacular, the need for reaching these consumers in their right context, in the right moment. So, really investing in some of the micro moment platforms which leverage vernacular. One example being, a glance is really, one of the ways that you could look at, building for Bharat. So that's a summary of the trends and the strategies that you could think of from a marketing lens for 2020. I'll hand over back to Rajesh to help summarize this.
Thanks a lot, Vasta. That was pretty insightful. And to just summarize, whatever you've shared today, if we look at broadly, there are three trends. There is, of course, the convergence of three C's that is happening today, wherein contextual shopping or commerce and content is something that's basically driving consumers towards more digital and probably mobile first experiences in this day and age. Also, when it came to the voice of the marketeer, both on the challenges and opportunities side, there were three big things that everybody called out. One was data, measurement, and finally personalization. And of course, there's this epic battle for Bharat, be it traditional brands like Unilever, which have always been trying to make sure that they have a stronghold around there, or the likes of Flipkart, etc., which are now building websites like Too Good or apps like Too Good, which are solely dedicated and curated for Bharat, is happening and is actually going to pick up steam in 2020. For them, mobile, innovation, and vernacular are probably the biggest keywords that will become front and center. Now, as you all know, and I shared at the beginning, the InMobi Marketing Cloud helps a lot of leading brands across verticals such as Unilever, Kotak Mahindra, Flipkart, Amazon, etc., to actually build their mobile marketing strategies across branding, performance, and customer engagement. And we are basically helping marketers across the journey, which is understanding, identifying, and engaging and acquiring their consumers. So please reach out to us at mobilemarketing@inmobi.com if you are looking to build your marketing strategy for the year, and we would be happy to connect you to the right folks. Just a brief note on Glance. So what you see here are the content experiences that we showcase on lock screens of leading OEMs such as Samsung, Xiaomi, MI, Xiaomi, Vivo, and Oppo. And these are all native experiences. This is not an app that the consumer needs to download, etc., etc. These are all inbuilt these are all an inbuilt feature of the device, and hence also based on the choices or selection of the consumer of language of the content pieces such as sports, technology, music, entertainment, etc. that they make. And this platform is something that you can actually use to do screen zero storytelling for your brand, where you launch your brand to sustain engagement and also build a lot of affinity for your brands. Finally, you can download the complete report on our link, which is inmovie.com/2020 India Yearbook. And this will give you the entire PDF or the interactive ebook that we have launched today. At this point, we will be taking up questions. Vasta, the first question for you is, what are the best sources of data to build context on consumers?
Sure. So I think there are a couple of ways to do this. If you are, of course, if you have any kind of online or mobile presence, then you would have access to already either cookie ID data if you have a mobile web or a desktop site, or what we call device IDs, which is either the Google Play ID or the IDFA if it is a mobile app. So any kind of online or mobile presence would allow you to collect data against these IDs, because it is important for you, if you're trying to build context on the user, to first define what is the way that you actually identify a user, what is the footprint of the user that you're going to collect data against, right? You could also be collecting it against, for example, phone numbers or email IDs if you get access to that. So the sources of that, could be multifold. It could be either directly, if the user is visiting your website in terms of, let's say their purchase journey on your website or on your app, right? You could be collecting information about what kind of products they have browsed, what kind of pages they have visited, what kind of information, they're interested in, which helps you, sort of define what are their, content preferences, what kind of things are they engaging with, and so on. So that's possibly the, richest form of data. And then there are, of course, partners in the market who can also help with, data enrichment of your own data. And there are multiple such partners in the market which could give you access to that. Happy to, if there is a specific question on that, connect people, to the right partners on that.
The other question is, what is the biggest challenge in adopting programmatic today? I think you mentioned that somewhere, Vasta. So
yeah, so I think one of the biggest challenges is, of course, earlier there was a lack of just awareness, right, when it comes to the programmatic ecosystem, because it is not an easy shift from a direct buy model to, just programmatic. And a lot of the programmatic that is being executed in India today is, say, also a PG or, programmatic guarantee buy, which is very similar to the direct buy. So I think awareness, understanding, and training of this is very important, because the programmatic tools, understanding, how auctions work, how do winning bids work, how do you do audience targeting in the programmatic world, these are all important, problems to solve. So I do think awareness and training is a very important component of, of adopting programmatic today in India.
Great, and probably InMovie's programmatic training can be the first step for them to actually figure out how they can get started with programmatic.
Absolutely.
A final question is, how should brands, shift their approach when communicating to planned versus impulse buyer personas?
I think for planned buyers, the way to work is that, it is possibly maybe easier to match your creative messaging or communication to a buyer who is a more planned buyer, because you know what that audience is in advance, right? I think for the impulse buyers, it is important that your creative messaging and communication changes, right? Because otherwise you may not be able to really hit them in that micro moment, right? As an example, say if you are an e-commerce player and you know that your buyer has, say, added something to cart or browsed something, then the way to change your communication would be to use some sort of dynamic creative optimization to change the messaging for that buyer by nudging them with that product or an additional coupon or something on that product, and completely change your messaging. So basically, you have to be very, very dynamic about your messaging and communication when it comes to the impulse buyer vis-a-vis a planned buyer, because that would be the only way to convert an impulse buyer in the right moment. So yeah, so that's just an example.
Great. Any other questions, please feel free to write to mobilemarketing@inmovie.com. We will get back to you with the specified answer, and also if you would like to get in touch with somebody, we will do that as well. Again, you can download the complete report on inmovie.com/2020 India Yearbook, or access it from the email that you will be receiving in some time in your inboxes. Thanks a lot, folks, for joining. We'll see you in the next InMobi webinar. Goodbye.